would like to start with Greg, and I would like to ask you a little bit about your experience with wildfire, and perhaps you can talk a little bit about how you came actually to being expert in this wildfire and what wildfire means to you specifically.
I've been a firefighter for 27 years. I started as a volunteer, part-time firefighter in 1993. And then in 1995, I became a full-time firefighter, so 25 years. So 27 years altogether. And I live in South Wales, which is quite mountainous. Not as mountainous as some areas of Germany, but we have a lot of valleys, a lot of steep valley sides, they had a lot of sheep on them, grazing the land, and we had a lot of forestry plantations. The forestry plantations were planted originally for the coal mines to put the pit props in the mines. And over time, these industries have sort of died down. So there's not so many sheep, very little sheep on the mountain anymore because of just the way that subsidies are paid. And there are no more coal mines. So there is no need really for the pit props for the forestry. So the forestry, a lot of it now goes to biomass. And we also have a big issue with larch trees, which they have a disease called Pitothera. I can't think the exact word. It's a long word, but they've got a disease. So a lot of these larch trees have got to be cut down, got to be felled. And a lot of these have been cut down and then left. So the fuel loading. So basically, we have a lot of fuel on the ground, but we also have a lot of fires. So about 2006, so 14 years ago, we started a wildfire project. And I was one of the leads on the project, working operationally, looking at vehicles, looking at tactics, looking at equipment. And this moved on. And originally, I thought that the problem would be solved by we had two projects running together. One project was to stop people lighting fires. We live in a really arson-prone environment. We have 4,000 wildfires deliberately lit every year in a very small area. If you look on a map of South Wales area, it's very small, but we have a lot of fires for that area. And so it was one part of the project was to reduce the ignitions, and then the next part of the project was if we train the firefighters and firefighters can put out the fires, this will solve all our problems. The reality of that 14 years later is, yes, we have less fires. We've done a lot of work to stop people lighting fires for no reason. But what's happened is the fires have got bigger because there's more vegetation. So really, the only people who were managing our vegetation were the arsonists who were lighting the fires. There's no sheep anymore on the hillsides. There's no real land management. The forestry isn't managed with wildfire in mind. So we were getting larger fires which were burning for weeks and weeks. We had a fire in 2018 which burned for 3 weeks through forestry. We have large incidents, and that's also recently led to large landslides. Historically, if you look at South Wales, we have had some horrific landslides, especially the Aberfan disaster, which killed a school full of children. So very severe issues of the coal was taken out of the mountains, placed on the mountains, and now that's grown over with vegetation, and now we're getting fires on our vegetation, which obviously is then now causing landslides. So whereas I thought originally the way to solve this problem was well-trained firefighters and try to stop people lighting fires, I now have sort of come full circle. We need to manage the vegetation. So as a fire service now, we do that ourselves. We have a robotic cutter without cutting fire breaks, without prescribed burning. We burn areas where we know there will be fires. We're trying to manage the land. We're trying to encourage farmers to graze. It's really important that the land is managed. And the idea of taking fire away from the landscape has totally changed in my mind now. We need fire on the landscape. This magic wand which we were going to have to stop fires was just a dream, really, because all that happens is the vegetation grows and grows, the vegetation gets more. And we come at these problems, because we're firefighters, we come at these problems of if we reduce car accidents, road traffic accidents, we save people's lives. If we reduce house fires, we save a lot of damage, we save people's lives. And we had the same idea that if we reduce wildfires, we'll do the same. But it's actually wrong, because the less fires we get, the more the risk is building. So we've got to be really clever. And this is where it's been a really long journey. And it's been sort of 14 years of my life where I've put a lot into it, but now I understand a lot more, and I'm nowhere near the end yet. And I don't think anybody is, because we're all in different silos and we all got different opinions. But in my mind, it's the vegetation, it's the fuel that is the problem. And that's what we need to manage. And how we do that is, again, it's a massive impact it's going to be for us. We talk about climate change. We talk about lots of things, but reducing fires, yes, people shouldn't go out and just light fires for fun. But we then need to manage the subsequent vegetation buildup, because we will start getting more damage in fires. We will start losing lives. Firefighters are being put in extremely dangerous positions. Every firefighter now is trained in South Wales, whereas in the past, when I joined, it was just, this is a fire beater, that's a fire, off you go, beat the fire out. So this journey has been a really long journey, but really beneficial, and we are slowly getting there. But it's about breaking down silos of ecologists, land managers, politicians, the media, and trying to build relationships so we can all work together to solve this problem. We have helicopters in South Wales. We have 2 helicopters we can call upon. We have burn teams who will get in front of the fire. And so on a small scale, nothing like Alan will talk about it in America, but we're quite good at what we do now through a lot of training, a lot of commitment. But again, we're nowhere near solving the problem, because we don't even know what the real problem is. I think it's vegetation. But again, other people will tell you different. Other people will tell you that we need to rewild the mountainsides, and we just need to tell people not to light fires. Well, I've been doing that for 27 years and it doesn't seem to work. So we've got to all work together, but we've got to understand the problem. And I think part of our problem is people don't understand what the real problem is. So that's a very quick introduction of of my background and what I do. But and again, I'm sure more questions will come. So thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting. I have to admit, there are already a few points which are really speaking to the core of the problem. And I think especially you're describing the journey of having a response-centered and hazard-centered approach, and then coming around and trying and seeing, okay, actually we need to get to a risk-centered approach and trying to find out where the risk lies and mitigate risk before we can actually come down and fight.
Yeah, I really believe that we are firefighters, and when we go to house fires, road traffic accidents, all fires, we need to fight the fire. When it comes to wildfires, I think there is a time when we need to fight the fire, but we need to become fire managers. And by becoming fire managers, we will help to solve this problem, because not every fire is doing the same. There are no real fire ecologists in the United Kingdom, in Wales, but we now have better understanding, and having the same methods of attack for all fires is wrong. You need to, on a very high, like what they would call in America, a red flag day, yeah, you need to get in and put the fires out. But on a cold February day, that fire is not going to do no damage, so let's let it, and let's just manage it. And that's really important. And I think that journey from firefighter to fire manager is really important.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay. Just for our students, perhaps that's interesting, because I think it's exactly what the United Nations disaster risk framework is looking for, right? This journey of hazard-centered towards a risk-centered approach. So I think hearing it in practice and having you describe it like that is really interesting. So now let's give also Alan Sinclair a chance to introduce himself and speak a little bit about what wildfire is for him. Thank you very much.
Hey, well, good morning from Arizona, everybody. It's just a little after 6 a.m. here, so I'm just waking up and having my coffee. But Craig, you're on the right track there. I started my career in 1990 with the United States Forest Service in Arizona on the Tonto National Forest. I worked there for 18 years. During that time, I, was working on wildland fire engines. I've been on hotshot crews, and I started my career and kept moving up. Our system is based on task books and qualifications. So you go from being like a squad boss to an engine boss or a crew boss, managing, operational assets, moving into task force leader, strike team leader, into division, managing all the assets within a geographical area on a fire. I moved into operations, managing all the operational assets on our incidents, and am now a Type 1 incident commander with Southwest Area Team 1, which is one of 15 national teams. So we've got a lot of fire in our region. Our region is Arizona, New Mexico, a little bit of Oklahoma, and a little bit of Texas. We have 2 Type 1 teams in our region that are on a rotation within the region, but then we're part of a national rotation. So when regions get overwhelmed with fire and their teams are all deployed, we'll move teams from one region into another region nationally. And so I'm with the Team 1, we're part of that national rotation. Kind of as Craig pointed out, when I started my career, my mind was in the firefight. I was a firefighter. I would go put fires out. I did not really understand what Craig was mentioning about what the true root of the problem was, and how much more conversation needs to exist to really get to the core of what our issues are, and making sure that all the people that have information to share, so that we end up with the right end state of our incident, are at the table communicating. Communication is a huge piece of what we do. And there's a lot of folks that do get involved that steer, the actions that we take and the decisions that we make. And so in my career, I've been very aggressive with fighting fire, and also now standing back a little bit. And if, as Craig pointed out, fire is doing good in the environment, and there's a consensus from our resource advisors and other folks that give us information that, we can back off a little bit. We're letting fire, take its natural role at times where we can. So we could have an incident where portions of the fire are being aggressively fought, and other portions of the fire are kind of moving freely within the lines that we've drawn on a map. So I really liked hearing what Craig had to say, because that's really important. I've been a part of @Fire since 2008, and have come over to Europe several times with Jan. Even sent me down to Bolivia last year. So I kind of pay attention to fire on a global scale, and I'm really, I'm very fortunate to work within the system that I do and have access to the assets that we have on our large fires. But I have a passion to volunteer, which @Fire kind of taught me when I came over to Germany the first time, and saw professional firefighters also volunteering when they're at home at their local fire stations, and all the folks within @Fire that were volunteering to learn how to safely engage fires. The other thing that I've noted, in the past, I guess it's been 12 years now that I've been with @Fire, I've paid attention to fires in Europe, and they appear to be becoming more prevalent. And I've seen some get a little bit bigger than I've seen when I first started paying attention. I deployed to Portugal with @Fire, and we went and fought fire. And I think that might have been 2012. maybe. So, it's a global issue. And I think sessions like this, where people are really trying to get their head around what the future is going to look like and what direction to go to address the issues is a big deal. That would be it for an introduction for me, unless there's any questions.
Wow, thank you. Thank you both for this wonderful introductions. And I think with that, Martin could pose the first question.
Yeah, let's start with it. So I think we have here in the group also some of the, it's called a Cologne Game Lab, just to give also the picture to Greg and Alan. And they are producing, let's say, serious games. I think, please correct me if I'm wrong, but to train really people, politics, whatever, firefighters or different groups. So to manage somehow also the transition between the game and the training, somehow it's getting more and more the same thing at the end. It's just depending maybe on the fidelity. So one part or one idea is also to include such simulation. So simulation virtual training into the career or into the training period of firefighting, wildland firefighting in particular, maybe to make a fast transition of experience, let's say, to not have to train so much in the field because we don't have the chance to train in the field. So, and then the question would be, what is the current use of simulation or virtual training in firefighting training, and how do you expect that for your, let's say, your area of responsibility or your environment, maybe Greg and for 1008s, but maybe also Alan, for you on a, maybe say even a larger scale on command where only your management team has 80 people. Do you make virtual training with your 80 people, Alan?
So, a lot of the training is, our team's made up of people that have day jobs, right? So, my day job now, I work for the Bureau of Indian Affairs since 2008. I'm a fire management officer, so I have a local responsibility. A lot of the training that gets done is done, when they're at home. So our teams don't have a real opportunity to get together and do training. As I mentioned, a lot of the qualifications, there's task books and classes that you have to take to get to be qualified in certain positions. And so as far as simulations, we have two classes. We have got 420 and 520. So for a type 2 team, to be command and general staff on a type 2 team, you got to go through 420 and then 520 for type 1 teams. And those are kind of a simulation-based training, but it's all done in-house. So there's actors, and we'll have people kind of controlling the simulation in another room. But it's really in person, people coming in and interacting with the team members. We'd have a radio in the room and somebody would be talking on the radio from the other room, maybe a phone in the room and people calling in. So it's really about inputs being given to the people going through those classes, and seeing how they respond to them. And those are big classes that people have to get to be on the teams. There's other simulation based training that folks do. A lot of sand table exercises that are utilized to really look at specific things with, how are you going to address this fire? Here's what's at risk. Here's the fuel type. Here's the weather conditions. What are you concerned with, and how are you going to react to it? So we do use simulation, but a lot of it's like either at the sand table or in person, not a lot of virtual simulation, but I see that there could be a value in that in the future.
Sounds interesting. And Greg, do you use in your, because I think the big difference is that in the US, Alan, your team is spread locally very, very large on large area. Maybe 1,000 Wales is much smaller, so it's maybe easier to get the people to the same point. But do you use virtual training?
Yeah, we use XVR software, which is I think you've probably seen it. It's a fire service incident command software, but we don't use it for wildfire training. So I'm fortunate enough. I've been to Valabra near, I think it's Marseille, where they have the French have their training center, and it's incredible to see the things they can make this software do. But what I found with it, because we don't have a dedicated team to write these scenarios, I just struggle with all the computer work, and you've got to have special computers. These are like gaming PCs. These are not just like the computer I'm on now. So it takes a lot of time to set up. So we run tabletop exercises where we'll come up with a scenario, we'll come up with the weather conditions, the fire, and a bit like what Alan said, we'll put people into groups and we'll build an incident management team, and they go into breakout rooms and there'll be different things going on, and we'll have an incident within the incident. But the most important thing of all this is trying to get people to make a plan, because I find if we go to a rail crash, any incident, a house fire, a building on fire, there's always a plan. When I go to a wildfire, because it's spread over a large area and there's a lot going on, it's very hard to find out what the actual plan is and get one person then to take command of that plan and make sure, because these incidents can go on for a number of days, it's that the plan is the same. Or you can adapt the plan, but you can't just keep changing the plan because a new incident commander has turned up. And that's what I like about what the stuff Alan does with the incident management teams, which is different to what the UK do. I'm part of a UK response for wildfires, so I go all over the UK, and different services manage them completely different. And I went to one incident where the incident commander was changing every 4 hours, and the plan was changing every 4 hours. So we'd be moving left, moving right, moving up, moving down. It doesn't work. And that's one of the important things about training, is to get into people. These are not typical fire service incidents. These are going to go on for a long time. And I don't really think when I joined the fire service, we never had a fire that burnt through the night and burnt into the next day and the next day. And these are now happening, and we need to adapt. And I think we're quite slow at adapting because we think we are very good at being a fire and rescue service. When new challenges come, we're quite slow. So that is the most important thing. If anybody take anything from this, is making a plan. So, but yeah, tabletop exercise is really important. Thank you.
Thanks.
So at that point, I like to mention that we have 4 to 5 topics for today. And I would like to ask the audience questions to speak to the topic at hand. So at the moment, fire simulation, we are training. And with that, Walker, I think you have a question or a discussion point.
In Sweden, we get a lot of small fires, several thousand small fires every year, catch them at maybe 20 meters by 40 meters. But now we're beginning to see larger incidents that run multiple days, like Craig said. And our management teams, because of their commitments back at their districts, our management teams are changing out every 3 days. And it makes it very difficult to have the continuity that Craig talks about to suppress the fire. And I would sure like to develop some sort of simulation training, especially for the management teams, because they are very good. And their training schedule is already very busy, but we are getting into a new phase of forest fire activity that they haven't developed a lot of experience at.
So does that mean also that it would make sense that if we develop such simulation games, they should also last 4 days, as multiple days? Meaning, or do you see a chance to make a training for 2 hours and have the same experience then, or the same experience and success then in the reality, when the fire takes multiple days, let's say, or should we do the simulation training for multiple days also?
I don't think having trainees attend for several days is very realistic, but within the scenario, you could, in the course of an hour or two, you could create a scenario that takes several days or a couple of weeks, just to, yeah, that answers your question.
Okay, yeah, perfect, thank you.
I would like to, I think I hear those send tables. I would like to get back to those send tables, Alan, you just mentioned, because I think I hear them also being used at Fire and in the south of Spain and France is it to demonstrate or try to rebuild a fire and then have it on a small scale so everybody stands around and tries to picture out what's going to happen from the response phase? Is that what send table is?
Yeah, exactly. So, well, the largest one I've ever worked on was last year in Germany, the one that Jan and the guys built. That was pretty big. So, it could be whatever size you want, but you use the sand to really build the topography, and you could, put stuff on there that would indicate a road or structures or power lines or whatever you want to do. So, then you can stand around and everybody's got the same visual of the incident area, and you could talk about the things that you would do, where you would place your fire engines, if aircraft's in the air, what are the hazards, where would you have them dropping water. And so, you could really tailor those sand table exercises to really work through the questions and answers that you want to find. And it's really good for, folks that are coming in new into new leadership roles, your engine captains and folks like that. They can be very valuable to them because you can observe their decision making and feed them information and see if it changes the direction that they're going to go with the way that they would approach the incident.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. So do you think there's a chance of rebuilding that in a simulator, or a VR environment? So to speak to get this, I think if I understood correctly, the goal is to show hazards which arise and the scene itself, and with particular information concerning fuel and critical access road and so forth, right? So yeah, absolutely. I think that, especially after this year with this past year with COVID and people going to platforms like Zoom and doing a lot of this virtual stuff, I think the timing's right to look at some of that stuff. How do we continue to do the exercises where we would normally bring a bunch of people together to do it in a more virtual format? I think there is going to be value in that in the future. Okay, thank you. Yes, so I think we time-wise we change to the next topic, and if we will have a period in the end of the discussion to go back to specific questions if there are any. So the next topic would be concerning the communication side of things. So especially technical communications, and perhaps Greg can speak to it because you mentioned that your area is also pretty hilly. How is your experience with communication, not only technical, but also perhaps human errors which arise, but of course also, do you feel like you have enough tools to really communicate effectively?
No, communication is a big problem, like using the radios. We have the Tetra, we call them airwave radios, which are pretty good. But again, they are more instant command to the control room rather than fireground messages. We have mobile phones as your standard iPhone sort of thing, but again, a lot of the places we don't have network. So it's like going back in time. We have incidents in the city which are quite complicated, building on fire, and the incident runs like clockwork because we train for it, we do it. And then all of a sudden we get a wildfire in the middle of nowhere and we collapse because people are not used to it, because we're relying on, like I say, we're relying on these. And when this doesn't work, it's a nightmare. And we have to sort of go back in time, and it's quite hard, and it is an issue for us. We've just had newer radios which are digital, so should make things easier. But again, it's still a struggle for us, and it's really important because that's when I think if you look through a lot of fire fatalities, it's a lot of communication mistakes or lack of communication which has caused these problems. So that's something we do need to get on top of. I've worked with the Catalonians, the Graf fire teams, and they have some really simple systems, whereas they have GPS trackers in their radios, and then that goes to a very simple screen in the fire engine, or like a tablet, and you can see where everybody is. And that was 10, 12 years ago I saw that, and we still haven't got to that level. So I think that's important. Tracking firefighters, knowing where firefighters are is vital, I think. And I think Alan will probably talk about that as well after some of the things that have happened in America. But yeah, comms is a problem.
Feel free to jump in.
The tracking of firefighters, that has been a hot topic, and folks are trying to figure out what that means. Some of our incidents, we'll have 1,000 folks or more assigned to it, and so we're looking at if you're managing a fire for 2 weeks to a month, and you've got all these resources coming and going. Who, if we are tracking resources, who's going to be responsible to be looking at the screen all day and, making sure they understand where assets are. And we're also looking at, is it individual firefighters, or is it, the engine, the hotshot crew, one person on the crew, or is it all 20 people? So it's a conversation that's going on right now. I see the value in it. It's just nothing that I've experienced. So, we haven't had real time tracking that I've been involved with. But there could be value there for sure.
Yeah, interesting, because we actually do plan to, in our proposal, we trying to propose a solution which allows personal tracking of firefighters. And I think it would be interesting if you guys could speak a little bit more to this question of how would tracking influence the decision-making process in the command structure, right? So is there some things there which would you think be valuable to make things easier and smoother?
Craig?
Yeah, when I see where Alan's coming from. Very large incidents over a long, long time, very complicated. Our incidents are, even though they're large to us, they're a lot smaller than what Alan's used to dealing with. But the Winter Hill fire in Lancashire in 2018, they actually lost a firefighter. So when they evacuated, the fire made a run under sort of extreme weather conditions, and the crews left the mountain, and one of the firefighters got lost, and they didn't know whether he'd got lost as in navigation, he lost, or burnt, or what. Nobody knew. They lost the firefighter. And when you think of that, it's sort of, that was 2018, and we've moved on as a fire rescue service, as technology, and we still don't know where these people are. Now, again, mobile phones are brilliant, and when we go out as a team now, because I manage a sort of wildfire team that goes anywhere in the UK, we're using simple stuff like WhatsApp and put in our location on, so we can all within the team see where we are. Because when it's dark and you're in terrain you don't really know, it's important I know where everybody is and everybody knows. But again, I can really see where Alan's coming from, that it's just complicated. And a lot of people, it's just a big issue of how do you track them? Is it on a radio? Is it through their phone? Is it on a sort of a pin they wear, and then they lose the pin, or they forget to hand it back in? Logistically, it could be a nightmare as well. So something simple is needed. But again, I can also see what Alan's saying.
So I have the feeling that it would not only be interesting for command and control, but actually, if you are able to track the positions and automatically update it with the fire spread and see if there arises some hazard from the position firefighters being in, and the spread towards them, to give them some kind of alarm if a situation deteriorates unexpectedly. Right?
Yeah, I went to a 500 hectare fire in Catalonia, and it was getting dark, and the fire was reigniting in places, and we were in a command area down the bottom of the mountain looking up, and then you could look on the map and see where the breakout was, and then you could see where the nearest crews were, and actually tell the nearest crew, look, the fire is advancing to your left, can you go and have a look? It just made it so much easier that you can see where the firefighters are, see where the fire is, and then you can move your people around, or if someone's having an accident, you can find out exactly where. Whereas we do it in a lot of things, but we don't do it on sort of large wildfires.
Mm-hmm. Walker, jump in.
Okay. The last fire I was on here in Sweden was about 10,000 hectares. And we had 200 members of the rescue fire service assigned. And we had 600 or more volunteers or private business people operating equipment on the fire. So even if we were able to get these location devices to everyone on the fire, being able to make a decision on 800 individuals, or let's say 300 groups of individuals, is difficult. What we've had a problem with, and I think is more urgent, is communication. You may not see on a map or a computer screen where they are, but at least you can call them and tell them the fire is behaving this way, or we're expecting a change in weather, or can you relocate, can you evacuate, what the hell's going on there? So I guess I feel that's more important, getting a radio system on these fires where everybody has radio communication, and setting up a strategy where you're not having 800 people trying to talk on 2 radio frequencies, because that'll never accomplish anything.
I'd address that a little bit. You know, we've got in our logistics section, we've got a communications unit. So we've got a communications leader and comtex, and we'll look at the footprint of the fire and look at the topography, and they really know where radios are gonna have issues. And we set up repeater systems. So, we'll actually, have helicopters fly a repeater up to a high point, and those folks will, look at how that's going to create a network for folks to be able to communicate. And I'd agree, communication is huge. I think when you're tracking folks, you're going to have to kind of have somebody doing 2 things. One, knowing where they're at, and 2, knowing what the fire's doing and what that means for the location where those people are. If you have good communications, people can be reporting what they're seeing. and having a dialogue with the managers that are there. And we have different frequencies, right? So we'll have an air to ground frequency for folks that are on the ground to talk to aircraft that are coming in to give them support. We'll have a command frequency. So, if something needs to go out to everybody on the incident, that command frequency is where that messaging goes. And then we have tactical channels that will be used for a division. So a geographic area, all the resources within that area will be able to communicate on their TAC channel. So there's multiple frequencies being used for different purposes. And then there's people that are coming in to ensure that there's a system in place for everybody to be able to communicate well.
And that radio plan is in the incident action plan each day, so everybody knows, right?
A-firm, yes.
Excuse me, I like to comment if possible here. In Sweden, we have a complete cover actually of a similar system for hunting. We have a system which gives the position of each hunter when we are out in the team hunting. And we also have a position of all the dogs which is in the team. So we track every dog and can see where it moves. And every hunter where he's standing, we know exactly where he is moving and the position of that person. And it seems the same as this. And then we keep track of what's happening by having an SMS group. So everyone gets the same message. For example, from there is a team leader for the hunt. So he update by SMS to the whole group what's happened, if someone has seen a moose or something like that. Wouldn't that be exactly the system you are looking for? And this is done all over Sweden and in forest and in bad terrain and so on.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think you could give me a link to the system? Or to the systems?
I can find that. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Good thing is that you can fight fire and hunt mooses at the same time.
It seems to be the same problem to me. We developed that because we are, of course, very interested in moose hunting. So and there's a lot of people engaged in that one, and there is therefore sort of common software. There are a few of those, but the best of those that is available is they also locate all the hunters where they are located and also the dogs, and to combine that with an SMS only a group in the telephone. You send SMS to the whole group that is out hunting, and you know what happens all the time.
Okay, so I think before we jump into the next topic, I would suggest we do a short break as yesterday, so everybody can grab a new cup of coffee, and we will start back here at 3:05, so around 7 minutes. The next topic will be introduced by Martin, if he's back already.
Yes, thank you. So I think we talked now, or before the break, a lot on communication and situational awareness of the firefighters itself. I think the next point that we want to talk about a little bit is more on, let's say, situational awareness of the fire itself. So meaning, how can I get information about where is the fire, how intense is the fire, where will it propagate? For sure, that comes quickly into mind to use drones or airplanes or helicopters, whatever. But again, what is the what is there the status, and where do you see the challenges? Because I think there shouldn't be the challenge to use a Predator drone. I think, Alan, for you, you could just call it a Predator drone and it's flying and we have the best images of the fire, whatever you want. But are there still issues to be solved to get a good picture of the fire?
So, from my experience, drone technology is new, but we're using it, right? So we've used different types of drones, and air assets are not my expertise. We do have, on the team, I've got a whole section of air folks that really bring that stuff in, but we've used some very large drones that have very clear pictures of what the fire's doing and what the crews, the challenges are on the ground. So we've been able to deploy drones and really get that bird's eye view that has been valuable. So I expect that they will be used more widespread in the future. One of the issues with drone technology that we do have is drones that are not ours. So the public coming in and flying drones when they see smoke, and that shuts down our air operations. So what'll happen is, somebody from the public shows up somewhere, launches a drone, and a firefighter on the ground sees the drone. They report it. We don't know where the drone is. We don't know what elevation it's flying at, and we got to shut everything down until we figure that out. Some technology that we used this year that was interesting was we put a bubble over the fire that let us know if drones entered the airspace. And that technology was able to pinpoint the location of the drone,
Wow.
The height it was flying, and we would also know where the operator was. And so we could send law enforcement to that location to go interact with that person. And so we weren't having to shut everything down, and because we knew where the drone was at within the airspace. So, helicopters could be flying away from where that drone was. So, there's new technology with drones. It's new, but there's a lot of value, and we're just learning about it.
And for you, Greg, in South Wales, do you use that? And maybe also the next question is about how to integrate that into a decision support system or digital command system. Is that more or less, let's say, I also know that they are the helicopter flies across it, makes some pictures, then goes down. You have a USB stick going down to the next laptop, putting it in, getting the pictures via email. Okay, that could be a way, but maybe not the optimum way. So I think, how's the digital connection between them?
Yeah, unfortunately, can you hear me? Yeah.
Great, yeah.
Unfortunately for us, drones are a bit of a problem. We were very lucky. We had a drone in 2009. So that was 11, 12 years ago. We were ahead of the technology. And unfortunately for us, when we couldn't keep this drone in the air, it became a bit of a white elephant, and £30,000 we paid for this drone with all the computers that had to run it and everything. And it just became a non-entity. It didn't work. And it only had to be a gust of wind and it wouldn't fly and it would crash. And it was very unfortunate. So we're really behind the times now, because we still, as in South Wales, we don't have a drone capability. The local police have drones. Our neighbouring fire and rescue service have drones that we can call upon if we need to. But getting drones onto a wildfire is quite awkward. Now, we're looking at changing that. But again, it's quite complicated just because of the training you need to fly them in an operational capacity. So what we generally do is, if the helicopter is there, I'll jump in the helicopter. He'll fly me around the incident. I'll make a video on my phone, take as many photos as I can, and come back down and then pass that on, which is what you just said. But that seems to work for us because we haven't got the drone capability. And there's a bit of work going on at the moment, but some of these drones that are being sold to fire and rescue services are £40,000, €40,000, whereas you can buy a hobby drone which will do everything we need for £1,000. So I think sometimes we need to go a lot simpler rather than trying to be really technological all the time, because they are important. And I think drones have the capability to save people's lives, to make firefighters safer. And only last year, I went to an incident where we were doing a burnout operation to stop a fire spreading across the hill to properties. We couldn't see the bottom of the fire. We could see all the top, and we started walking down the track. Now, we had lookouts posted, but they couldn't see the bottom of the fire either. When we got down probably 50 meters from the bottom, we could see the fire had jumped across the track below us. So we were in a bit of an awkward position. We did tactical withdrawal. I think that's called running away. So we were very lucky. But again, if we'd had the drone, a simple £1,000, £500 drone, and put that up, it could have saved 5 firefighters from potentially a very risky situation. So they are important. But again, like you said, they're not. I like the drone footage I've seen of the thermal that's taken very early in the morning to show you what's possibly going to reignite or where your fire behavior is going to be the next day. Stuff like that to me is brilliant, really good and really worthwhile. So that's where we are, unfortunately.
Was there some question, Chris? Because you have to say if there's some question, because otherwise I would just wrap up with the following, or a small additional question on that point. Okay. Because one point that we're discussing quite a lot, and I'm not sure if it's just a language issue or if it's also an understanding thing, is there a difference between a decision support system and a digital incident command system? I would put the question as simple as it is. So do you distinguish? Do we have both somehow? So we are now on the way to say, okay, there may be a difference, but do you differentiate that? Or do you use even a digital incident command system, really a fully electronic system, which makes you all the documentation stuff, which enables you to communicate through text messages, which gives you a digital view on the scene, etc.?
All our instant command systems are done with books. It's writing down paper. There's nothing your decision making goes in a decision log, which is a book, which is very old fashioned. This sort of a sheet of paper, which is you write in duplicate, so you can rip one out and one gets kept in the book, one gets sent off. But it's very simple. But that's because that's mirrored on every single fire engine and our control unit. So when we go to a larger incident, the fire engine crew can hand over the book to the incident control unit and they can start running the incident. So it's simple, but it works.
And Alan, for you, for the big incidents, you also have somehow I know that the ICS itself is based on a lot of templates and sheets and paper that you have to fill out and give to the different people. But there's no electronic way to write or digital way to do that, right?
Yeah, we're doing more digital this past year. Certainly with COVID, we didn't want to be passing out a lot of paper, so we were able to have digital incident action plans and a QR code on the plan. So we could just post that QR code, people could scan it, and then they would have all the information right on their device. Wow. And we also use an app called Collector. And so it's real time. If there's connectivity and there's people in the field and they're putting in dozer line, they could put it right into Collector, and then it populates for everybody, so that they could see where the dozer line is, where stuff's heating up, whatever information they want to share, they could do it in real time. And that Collector app then updates it for everybody that's using it on the incident. So, things changed rather rapidly this past year with COVID coming into the equation.
Colin, did that device for the dozers and the other units, is that a unit that's a GPS unit that's issued to the operator, like radios, are issued to an operator coming into the fire?
Walker, were you talking to me?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so no, it's Collector is an app that is used. People are using iPads now, like in our division supervisors are using iPads. So what I was saying is, if dozer line was put in or hand line was put in, they can show that they can mark it within that Collector app, and it updates everybody. So our situation unit, where usually the divisions would come in and give the information, bring in their GPS units at the end of shift. They're not having to do that now. It's real time if they have connectivity.
Okay, thank you very much.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we again changed topics here, and I think that's the fourth and last topic would be in general going towards air operations. So we have this discussion on air operations going on, how important air operations are, and I think we can agree that they are very important, but also a little bit more towards night operations, because until now I think night operations are not established for air ops. So just because the risk is really high with flying aircrafts in the night. But are there do you know of efforts being made to also have aircraft flying by night, or is this perhaps already in some way or form already established?
So, for us, we don't have night operations, unless it's an emergency and we need to extract firefighters at night, then we'll use the appropriate aircraft if they're available. But as far as tactical operations at night, that's not something that we're doing. Craig, you got anything different than that?
No, same. No, nothing at night. Our helicopters can travel at night, the same as Alan said, but can't do any firefighting at night. And I don't really think we're at even though we've had a helicopter for about 20 years, it's still quite basic. We have a helicopter with a Bambi bucket, with ground-to-air comms, and it's quite simple. There's no digital sort of footage. There's no camera on the helicopter, nothing. He basically lands, we have a chat, and he starts firefighting. And that's as simple as it is, which is good because everybody can understand what's going on.
And how do you communicate with your aircraft? Is there I think in USA you're using air operations, which is adopted by Fire, but is that similar in UK?
At the moment we use a mobile phone.
Oh, mobile phone. Okay.
The pilot has a Bluetooth ear set, and I just ring him and speak to him through his iPad. And we've had radios in the past, but it's always complicated with licenses for once you go ground to air. We're looking now at we've got new digital handsets, and we've given the pilot one, and he's looking to get that set into all his avionics so he can have a push to talk button, which will be brilliant because we don't always have mobile phone coverage. So we need good comms, but nothing is simple because there's no real budget. Our helicopter firefighting helicopter is a private helicopter, and the Forestry Commission, who are National Resources Wales, pay for the helicopter, but we as a fire service manage the helicopter. So when you're asking for money for things, it's a three-way, it's very confusing. So it's slow, but it's simple as best is what I found.
And Alan, perhaps you can also speak a little bit towards communication with air operations and your viewpoint in general on air operations.
Yeah, so it's generally done by radio. We'll have different air platforms, and they'll have an air-to-air frequency. So everything flying around can talk to each other. But then there's also air to ground. And so, you know, if they need to talk to somebody on the ground, they can do that. I'm certain that cell phones are also used somewhere in the equation.
Yeah, sometimes it's best to speak directly and not just via radio, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But you're using aircrafts extensively, right? You're not only using helicopters but also big airplanes, to my understanding.
Yeah, so we'll use the VLATs, the very large air tankers. You know, the 747 we've used, the DC-10s. You know, a whole. You know, on these large incidents, we've got a whole air force that we staff with us, and air cranes and all sorts of helicopters for different missions. You know, for shuttling people or equipment or water or slurry to the fire.
I think that's especially interesting, especially those you call them wheelards, very large aircrafts. I think we don't, in Germany, we in general use helicopters and no aircrafts. And a few years back, there was a pretty big discussion on going if Germany is supposed to purchase aircrafts. What's your experience with the difference in use between aircrafts and helicopters and perhaps even wheelards then?
You know, it really depends on what the need is, you know, and they're each a tool for specific needs. You know, helicopters are very effective with smaller incidents where, you know, you want to be, you know, have some precision with where you're putting your water or your slurry. You know, the VLATs, the very large air tankers, you know, they're good in, you know, they're really effective in a grass field type, you know, where you can come in and put down a very long line of retardant or water. And it's real effective in grass. So, you know, you've got to look at the fuel type, what, you know, if there's a canopy that you're trying to penetrate to get down to the ground, and really determine what the best tool is for what you're faced with.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay. So
there's can I
go ahead? Mm-hmm.
There's been some work done, and there was somebody in the UK who was looking to get some of the air tractors, the 802 seats, they call single engine air tankers, and the cost per hour of a fixed wing aircraft is a lot less than a helicopter. So it sounds great, but when you do the maths, then that you've got to have a runway, and you've got to have an airport to land at, and you've got to you then got to have facilities at that airport to fill up the airplane. Whereas when you use a helicopter, the helicopter comes in, he lands in a roadway, a field, anywhere. The Bambi bucket can fill up from any open water supply. It's a simple solution. Whereas aircraft, even though when I did some work in South Africa and they used the single engine air tankers, they are brilliant, but there's a lot more cost behind the scenes. The hourly cost may be less with fixed wing, but the actual, all the work you have to do to get them in place is a lot more. I think, and also just to finish off that I think people need to realize is that firefighters put out fires. The helicopters, the airplanes, yeah, they can stop the fire spread, but you still need boots on the ground to go in there and actually damp down, to work, to actually properly extinguish the fire. Because I've been to a number of incidents where I've called on the helicopter in other services who are not used to working with them. They just think once a helicopter's there, they can all go home. It's not as simple as that. You still need the amount of firefighters on the ground to put the fire out.
Yes, obviously. Mm. And Martin, I think now Martin can take over at this point a little bit.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you. I think that's depending on the difference between wheelard and helicopters, totally dependent on the type of fire. And I think the advantage is, Greg told it or said it exactly, that the helicopter you can fill up even close to the fire, so the efficiency at the end. We shouldn't calculate the cost per flight hour, the cost per liter water. I think that's what's important, and then you come to different equations. I think we are now quite close to finish somehow the questions, the topics that we prepared from the, let's say, from the organization side. So we would really make up the field now to everybody. If somebody has some completely different topics, whatever, that you want to jump in and or want to put here in the field, is it to Alan and Greg, or is it even just to somebody else in the community here that should be discussed, or that we could tackle a little bit? I think we have at least half an hour left. I think that's a good point to open the question, or even maybe give the opportunity to Greg and Alan and ask them what question do they have.
I'm really thankful for this opportunity to share my knowledge, and through working with these groups, working with Act Fire, I've met Alan and I've met lots of other people, and I am lucky that I've travelled quite a lot through wildfire and through my work. But what I will say is it's really important to build these networks, whether official or unofficial networks, but we need to learn from other people's experiences. I've learned so much about like the issues around Smoky Bear, which came around in the 1940s, I think, where fire was seen as bad, and the lessons learned there. And then in 2007, we as a fire service did exactly the same. We didn't have a bear, we had a sheep, because Wales is full of sheep. And we spent a lot of time telling people that the sheep don't like fire. Well, really, we just wasted our time, because we need fire. And it's learning all these problems, even though they may not be on the scale as they are in Australia, America, and some of the Mediterranean countries, we do have a fire problem. And rather than try and reinvent the wheel, as fire services love to do, is we need to look. There's enough books out there that we can read. There's enough knowledge out there. We've got the internet now, even YouTube. There's stuff on there where you can learn. And even having discussions like this, you learn stuff, and you realize you need to learn from sometimes other people's mistakes. But making a mistake twice isn't really a way forward, is it? And that's, so you need the background knowledge and the understanding, really. And I think that's really important, doing things like this and learning together. And we can learn off each other. Even though I live in a very small sort of area of South Wales, there's things that I can share with you that you could think, oh, that's quite important, that's good. And the same as I've learned off Alan, talking about things to do with incident management and the stuff he did with the sand table, fantastic. Because we talked about the XVR. The sand table is so simple. One person can set that up without any IT skills and make a really good exercise. Whereas to work the XVR system, it's days and days of messing around and putting things in place. So what I would say is just we need to learn from each other and not make the same mistakes over and over again.
And I totally agree with you, Greg. And what do you think, what are the most important things that prohibit to propagate that faster? So meaning, I know, is it from technical, is it from knowledge aspect? I totally agree that the knowledge is there, but why does not everybody or some people go to YouTube, look at the videos, look at the books? Why is that experience not spreading faster?
I don't really know. I think there's quite a lot of people involved in fire now, and wildfire is an up and coming, the same as USAR was 15 years ago. Everybody wanted to be part of USAR. Now everybody in the UK wants to be part of wildfire because it's an up and coming thing, and we go to large incidents, we play with helicopters, we play with off-road vehicles, we set fire to things. So what's not to like? But you've got to be careful that you've got the right people who are doing it for the right reasons, and you've got to be in it for the long game. That's what I think is we're lucky in South Wales is when we started this project, most of the people who were involved are still in service. But I do have fears. I can retire in 5 years' time. And what am I handing over to the new people coming through? Because we shouldn't go backwards. We should always be moving forwards. So that as well. And I can't really answer your question apart from you need to do your research and reading and understanding and asking questions and getting into your communities and speaking to the farmers, speaking to the foresters, speaking to the landowners and understanding their problems, because I saw solutions in the past, and then when you talk to them, I got friends who are farmers, and you talk to them and they'll put a different slant on that. So you've got to realize you can't go upsetting people either. You can't just go in and because we're the fire service, we have a lot of powers. But again, you've got to use them wisely, because you can easily lose groups of people who can help you on your journey in the future. So it's about being nice, really, as well.
Yeah, I think that goes back to the beginning, what you said, right? With managing a fire. I mean, we are all some kind of always gravitating as a fire service towards putting out a fire or seeing a threat and beating it on the head with a stick of water and until it goes away, right? But to make this transition from seeing fire as a direct threat more towards seeing fire in the context of risk and seeing is it a hazard, and is the hazard exposed to elements at risk, right? So without the elements at risk, we don't necessarily need to fight the fire, so we can direct it differently. Perhaps we don't need to shut it down immediately. So even it could be healsome to have fire. And I think before the meeting, I saw a graphic which showed the fire incidents in California, and you could see that even though most fires occur during July, August, the biggest fires actually were more towards the end of this fire season. So when the fuel already is dry and or most dry, then the possibility of having really mega fires is there. Perhaps Alan, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but so perhaps seeing the conditions around a fire, and as you said, perhaps it's not a problem to let it burn at a certain rate, and therefore prevent a bigger fire in the end, towards the end of the season. Is that something which is also practiced in the USA, Alan?
Well, let me think how to talk about that. Fire is a natural part of many ecosystems. There's some areas that depend on fire for their health. In a ponderosa pine forest, what I've learned is, traditionally before we started stepping in and putting fires out, every 7 to 10 years, there'd be a lightning strike and you'd have a low intensity fire kind of cleaning up the forest floor. Now you suppress fires and in our case for over 100 years. So if every 10 years there was supposed to be a fire that would come through and burn lightly under the canopy and clean things up, now we've got 10 times the amount of stuff, right? So we're looking at and it depends on the agency. In the U.S. we've got 5 land management agencies, the U.S. Forest Service being one, but we have the Bureau of Land Management, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, United States Park Service, and the Fish and Wildlife Service, and then we have the states that also manage their areas. And so, depending on who's managing it and what their philosophy is, a lot of people are moving towards trying to reintroduce fire at the appropriate times under the right prescription. So it's prescribed fire. They actually write a prescription that the winds need to be within this range, the temperatures need to be within a range, and really look at what the end state of the area that you want to manage is. What should it look like? How often should fire be introduced? So there's a push now to get fire back into its natural regime within these ecosystems. But when fires are occurring at a time of the year where they're resistant to control and they're burning with in a way that's damaging the environment and threatening infrastructure, homes, people, then we're going in there and fighting them. So it kind of really depends on what the weather patterns are, and what the fuel conditions are. Has the area been in a long drought? There's just so many little pieces to that conversation. In my career, I've been doing this over 30 years. And, like I said, when I first started, it was like, we'd go put the fire out, and, there were burnouts that were done, in ways that, were effective at putting the fire out, but man, they did a lot of damage. And, so now there's, a lot of consideration in the way that we fight fire. In emergency situations, we're going to do what we need to do to protect human life and property, but people are really trying to take the time to do what's right, and putting fire on the ground under the right conditions is very effective, and doing things in advance of fire season, prescribed fires, fuel reduction projects, a lot of that stuff is a very valuable in getting us back to where we should be. But you see, like the August complex in California this last year, my team went there, and we were one of 4 Type 1 teams managing a 1 million acre fire. I mean, it took 8 hours to drive around that thing, an 8-hour drive to get around the fire. It's just incredible. But it's a big problem, and like I said, it's not just a problem here. It's an international problem. It's a global problem, and the way that you approach it is going to depend on what you know about it. And early in my career, I didn't know a lot about it. It took me studying and learning, and really having a different perspective now than I did back then.
Yeah, thank you. Jan, you have a question. Please jump in.
Yeah, it's more comment than a question. Being some kind of dinosaur between all those guys, and I liked one expression, the white elephant from Craig, and I would like to speak out a little warning. We're just noticing that Craig is organizing fires, even with helicopter air operations, with a telephone, with an airwave, and with paper. We are seeing that that Alan Sinclair and do an IAP mostly with paper. Okay, they're starting just to trying cautiously to go into electronic devices. Also using existing electronic devices like the Collectors app, and not developing some totally new stuff. I think we have to be cautious that we don't develop a white elephant. Especially being German, they're always on the pursuit of perfectness, but sometimes losing the contact with the ground. If you develop new things, then we have to take care that they are usable, that they are can't be destroyed even by firefighters. That is very hard to do. And that they have a real tactical use. Because if you're buying a 80,000 pound expensive drone, and it's not good for that we use for, then we are just running money. So in just my few words, I guess I hope, I really think, or I'm convinced that we can develop some really usable, good information technology for wildland firefighting, but we have to always do some kind of reality check if it's really usable, or just we're doing it because we like to do electronic things. Sorry for that.
No, it's a perfectly valid comment, I think. I think fire services are in general hesitant in adopting new technology, but sometimes you jump ahead, and sometimes it's simply, in the end, you discover it was a total waste of money. And we really need to implement co-design in our project in order to actually get out something which is useful for firefighters. Concerning the whole aspect, not only the use itself, but also how do you get it there, how you use it, and how do you store it, for example, what do you do? So all those questions need to be taken into account, and I totally agree. Yes, so we have about 15 minutes left, and I would ask, are there any questions in the auditorium at the moment? So, okay, then I think I have one question, because it's something which is really mystically, for me at least. It concerns what you just mentioned, Alan, using fire to fight fire, right? So not especially in the context of a response to a fire and using it as a suppression tool. Perhaps also Greg has some experience with it, but perhaps you could speak to that a little bit. The use of it and the effectiveness, perhaps, yeah.
So, using fire to fight fire is very effective. And what you need to make sure of is that you're, out ahead of it far enough to where you can complete your burn operations before the advancing fire gets to whatever line you're trying to hold. But, we've got really two tactics. We're either direct, where we're right up on the fire's edge, or we're indirect, where we're building containment lines away from the fire. And we go indirect, maybe because the topography where the fire is burning is extreme and it's hard to get in there, or the behavior of the fire is such that you can't have firefighters right up on it. And so when we're burning indirect line and we have unburned fuel between that line and the fire, it's a common tactic to go and burn that fuel off. So when crews are doing that, there's a lot of things that they're taking into account. And safety is the number one priority. They want to do it safely. So like I said, they need the time to complete what they're gonna do, and make sure that the conditions are right when they start lighting. So there's a lot of classes that firefighters take to become a firing boss and to be able to do those tactics. But they are effective, and they're used very commonly on fires.
Colleen Walker here. Imagine a scenario where you have a bunch of firefighters and management team members come to your fire, and they don't know how to predict how the fire is going to burn, how fast it'll spread, what direction it's going to spread. They don't have a lot of experience with wildland fire. How do you train them? If that's the situation in much of Europe, how do you train them and accumulate experience so that you can use them as firefighters or management team members on your team?
So, yeah. So we in South Wales now, we use fire to fight fire as a tactic, and we train people. And to train people to do this, we do prescribed burning. So we're managing the vegetation build-up, which is a bonus for us because we can then have less large fires. But developing people's skills. Now, we are very lucky. We have lots of fires in South Wales, so lots of our crews gain lots of exposure to these fires. I went to the Wareham forest fire, if you Google it, in Dorset in May 2019. It was a large 250-hectare forestry fire that burnt for a week, and they were really struggling to put it out. And I went as a tactical advisor, and then I got a helicopter to go to the incident. Our helicopter came, and then I mobilised my burn team from South Wales, and they came. And I briefed the incident commander, and then at about 11 o'clock at night in the dark, there was approximately 200 firefighters on the fire. We pulled all the firefighters off, and 6 of us went in and did a really big tactical burn. We burnt about 2 kilometre line of forestry. But we pulled everybody out because, like you say, people haven't got the experience, they haven't had the exposure to seeing. Because we lit some big fire on that day, that evening, night, and there was probably 100-foot high flames coming out of the forest where we were burning back the fire. But again, you are right in what you say is gaining this exposure. And at the moment, we're looking to train more tactical advisors in the UK. The problem with that is you've got to be exposed to fire to gain experience, to then learn more. Just picking people because their service is saying that, yeah, they're the right person to do it. If the service isn't having the fires, you're never going to learn. It's like, I can't really think of an example, but if you're in a really wet climate, you probably don't get lots of wildfires, so you wouldn't become a wildfire advisor. And that's the problem. You need exposure, and sometimes small numbers of people is better than large numbers of people. We put out the 250 hectare fire with 6 of us and 2 drip torches. So
I agree that prescribed burning is an excellent way to train people in fire behavior and how to deal with fires. But my scenario suggests that there's very little prescribed burning going on. And can Christopher and his group somehow supplement that for us?
Here, so I think what you're talking to is the idea of how are we getting people trained if there is not even exposure, as Greg just mentioned, right? If you have no exposure, you're not being able to train people. Perhaps we need to set up an exchange service between, as student exchanges exist, perhaps we need to do a little bit more of firefighters exchanges between the different countries, right? Perhaps Jan, you just raised your hand. Please go ahead.
Yeah, the point is you can't have burn bosses or people who are burning use a tactical fire without proper training at prescribed burns. That belongs together. Let's say if Craig started the whole thing, he went to Spain and watched Brief what they are doing. At Fire is sending people to Ellen and to the United States and to Spain to learn it. And we just have, let's say, 3 or 4 people within at Fire who are really capable to do controlled burns. I put a picture in the chat. We did a large burn last year in East Germany, and there are just 3 or 4 guys who all been to the United States, who all been to Spain to learn this thing. And as Craig said, you don't need the high numbers of people, you just need low numbers of people with a good expertise. So the point is, if you don't have prescribed burns, then in the end, you have to send your people abroad to learn it.
You know, and I'll jump in really quick too. Jan, one of the years I came over, we did some burning in the Harz Mountains, the Coluna vulgaris, the heathlands there.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think doing little things like that, you know, having people exposed to it, even at a small scale, is valuable. And through our collaboration, Jan sent at Fire personnel here, and I've hosted them here in the States. And you know, we've had some of them actually deploy on hotshot crews. Flagstaff hotshots took one of them one year. Thought you'd like that, Walker. Yeah, it actually took one of the at Fire guys to fires in California with them, and you know, I've put them with different crews and tried to get them, you know, valuable experience whenever they come over. But, you know, that's small scale. You know, that's just one relationship making that happen. But yeah, if there was a way to make that more available or to do something on a larger scale, you know, some of the things that Jan's organized, getting folks together, I think is a great platform to do that. But it's, you know, one of the things that I've seen in my career is areas that get a lot of fires and they have success putting them out. You know, those tactics work, but then when things start to change and those fires start to change, you know, the experience needs to be there to really ensure that things are being done safely. And like I said, I don't know how often you get fires with big pyrocumulus on them, but those big headers, big smoke columns. But I've started to see those more and more popping up on like the European Wildland Firefighter Facebook page and stuff. So I mean, things have definitely been changing since I've been paying attention. So I would suggest keeping conversations going, making sure that you've got a network of contacts. Craig's doing great stuff in Wales. He's pretty close, but if there's ever incidents where you're engaged with something that maybe you got some questions about, use your networks to reach out and ask folks, what they think.
Yeah, I at least in Sweden we're doing that, but Christopher and his group seem to be focused on trying to develop some simulation or virtual reality training to help the European Union progress. And I agree, you reach a point where you just need the experience. I think this fire might do such and such. And I agree that a really good opportunity is being on prescribed burns. But I can almost imagine a training tool that gets more people interested in prescribed burning and its application or connection with wildfire fighting, and then saying, well, maybe I'll go to Germany for that prescribed burn that's coming up in June, or maybe I'll go to Spain for 2 weeks during their fire season. I'm just trying to connect all the dots.
I totally agree. I think it's a puzzle. So one piece is definitely, for example, virtual reality training, if it is possible and if it is efficient, then I think it allows people to do stuff in different steps, right? So you could start on a very basic course, and if you put enough resources in it, you could actually advance to an advanced course, right? And in between, yes, definitely prescribed burns in Germany or in the states they are living in. But I think also the idea of having an exchange service specifically tailored to this experience is an idea we should take up and we should discuss in our consortium, because I think the point of Greg is really important. Jan, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I think the point of Walker is that, let's say if we develop some kind of a serious decision game or serious tactical simulation of a wildfire, we could put in there, based on a real fuel model and real fire progression, also tactical fire. So that, let's see, the management, fire officers can see how to use tactical fire, not with a drip torch in the hand, but from a computer simulation. See, okay, I can, for this fire, I can order 150 fire engines, or I just can order, let's see, a burn team. And what happens to that? That thing would be a good idea. And at least from all of us, at least Craig will know that how much tactical fire is changing your tactics, or even your view of a fire. So, and if you could, let's say, propagate this with a tactical fire simulation as a part of the toolbox of fighting wildland fires or managing wildland fires, which is the better term, I think we could, let's say, get some firefighters on board thinking about that. But because right now, and speaking for Germany, if I talk to those guys and speaking about tactical fire, they're just laughing about us.
I think nobody wants to get their hands burned, so to speak, right? So it's something new. It's something which is perhaps nobody has experience with it. So everybody goes back to their preferred case of just throwing water on everything. And it might not be the best solution. Yes, I agree. Okay. And with that, I think we're at the end of our time. thank you very much for everybody participating. It was a wonderful discussion. Personally, I learned a lot, and I think I have a lot to think about. And I would like to give Alan and Craig a chance to have a last word. So please go ahead, and then I will end the discussion for today.
I just want to say thank you for the opportunity, and good luck in everything you do, and keep the partnerships, keep the networking going. It's really important. Thank you.
Have a beer with us.
Yeah, yeah. Cheers, Craig. I would say the same thing. You know, I really appreciate the opportunity to be involved today, and you know, it's a passion of mine. Getting to talk with folks and meet new people and see some old friends today. But I think that there is room for growth in Wildland Fire. You know, I'm excited to see what you come up with as far as VR. I mean, that's who knows what value exists there. I mean, that's some exciting stuff. And you know, it's really important to keep the conversation going. You know, I've seen Europe changing. And you know, there's just so many things that need to be considered as you move forward with suppressant fires and really understanding it with the EU. You know, what is fire's natural role, and what are we doing when we're putting fires out, and are we doing it safely? And safety is going to be the number one thing to be considering. Making sure that you're keeping people safe, sticking to the basics of fire safety, and really making sure that the people that are engaged with it know what's up. And my dog's saying hello to well, so I again thank you, and I appreciate being involved today.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you very much, Alan and Craig. It was nice to see you again.
Yeah, thank you all. Cheers.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Alan.
Bye.
I hope to see you soon again, all in real life.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yes.
Bye.
As soon as we can, we'll be back together.
Yeah, great. Bye.
Yeah.
See you.